Chapter 25, economic growth. I talk about economic growth, that means the output of the economy is increasing. That's what it means. So let's go down. What is macroeconomics? The study of economics can be divided into two areas. One of these involves looking at the economy as a whole. That is macro. It looks at the performance and structure and behavior of the entire economy. For example, it involves analyzing patterns of total income or spending, total employment, the general price level, and total value of all goods traded with other countries. This is macroeconomics. In contrast, microeconomics look at individual parts of the economy. It looks at how individuals, households, or firms make decisions when allocating resources. It often involves analyzing specific markets, such as the market for air travel, whatever market it is. So for micro, it is individual markets. For macro, it's the whole. So go down. What are macroeconomic objectives? We're talking about government macroeconomic objectives. When managing the economy, the government has certain aims. These aims are called macroeconomic objectives. They focus on 4 key economic measures, but include other aims that have become increasingly important in recent years. What are those government economic objectives? 1, reducing unemployment, protect the environment, balance of payments, economic growth, controlling inflation, redistribution of income. One of the key aims is to promote economic growth. This means that the government introduces policies designed to help grow incomes, outputs, and employment in the economy. However, at the same time, as creating more jobs and improving living standards, the government must ensure that prices do not rise too quickly and that imports are not significantly greater than exports. Also, in recent years, governments have been under pressure to introduce measures that protect the environment and distribute income in the economy. So, for economic growth, the government wants to ensure that the income level is the national income is increasing, employment is increasing, output is increasing. So, for this to happen, government must come up with policies to make sure it happens. So if these things are able to be done with government help, the government will be able to protect. And as soon as these things happen, it means that resources will be used. So for resources not to be used up, government will come up with policies that would reduce the use of resources. And also with this, government will come up with policies that would reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. That is redistribution of income. So these are what government economic growth is all about. So what is economic growth itself? Over a period of time, most economies will grow. This means that national income will rise. National income is the value of all incomes in the economy added together. It includes income from wages, profits, royalties, dividends, interest, income generated abroad. National income is also equal to the value of all output of production in the economy, which is the GDP. It is equal to the value of all spendings in the economy. So if the economy is producing more, businesses are more profitable and share prices rise. This makes it easier for businesses to raise more capital and employ more workers. As more jobs are created, income rises. This means that consumers will have more money to spend on goods and services, which will drive economic growth even higher. Consequently, economic growth is desirable. So, economic growth is a reflection of increasing output within the economy. So if this happens, income level will rise, households will have more money to be able to spend, living standards will increase. So if all this employment will increase, living standards will improve, output will increase. All this means that the economy is improving or is increasing, the growth is increasing. So it is a reflection of the national income and the output. Clear? So go to how to measure the economic growth. The most common measure of national income or gross domestic product, GDP, is the GDP. So to measure your national income or to measure economic growth, you use GDP, which is the measurement of the country's PPC, what you can produce in this economy. So whatever you have produced, the monetary value of what has been produced is the GDP. Clear? Yes. The monetary value of your output is the GDP, which we measure them. This measures a country's total output. It measures the value of all goods and services that are produced in the country for sale. It includes both goods that are sold domestically within a country and those sold overseas as export. However, GDP only measures final production. The manufacture of parts and components used to make another product are not included. Exports are included because they are part of domestic production. However, imports are subtracted because they represent the output of another country. So that's why when we are measuring GDP, it is C plus I plus G plus X minus N. Clear?
Yeah.
So GDP is used to measure economic growth all over the world. Using this standard definition means that meaningful comparisons can be made between the growth rates of different countries. Because because when we are measuring the GDP of a country, we use the same formula. It means we can decide which country is bigger and which country is smaller. Clear?
Yeah.
Limitations of GDP as a measure of growth. Although GDP is a common measure of economic growth, it does have some limitations. One, inflation. So when inflation has to be reflecting, or when inflation has to be measured with GDP, it becomes real GDP.
No.
There's real GDP, there's GDP.
Yeah.
So real GDP means you are measuring the GDP, relating it with inflation. So let's read. Price increases can make growth rates. I skip?
No.
Okay. Inflation. Price increases can mean growth rates are misleading. For example, if an economy grows by 2.6% in a year, and prices also rising by 2.6%, the economy has not grown. It has remained the same because the 2.6% increase in money GDP is matched by a 2.6% increase in prices. What they are saying is this. When there's inflation rate of 2.6, or when there's an inflation rate of certain percentage, and to you, you think the economy has grown as that rate. No, it is not. It doesn't. Prices has increased. The price that increases makes you to think that the GDP of the country has increased. It is not.
Yeah.
Do you get the point here?
Yes.
An increase in the price of goods and services would mean that the GDP of that country would rise.
Yeah.
But it does not mean that output has increased.
Yeah.
It does not mean that consumption has increased.
Yeah.
It only meant that the value of what is being sold has increased.
Yeah.
Do you get it? So it is misleading. Do you understand? Do you understand or not?
No, yeah, I do.
Okay. Population changes. Population growth must be taken into account when analyzing growth patterns. So if for example, if GDP grows by 2.8%, the population also rises. This increase in population will offset the growth in GDP. GDP will therefore be difficult to calculate. To overcome this problem, we have to use GDP per capita. So if you want to overcome the problem of GDP used as a measurement of population, it's better we use GDP per capita, which is GDP divided by total number of population. Clear?
Yeah.
So population might change. You wouldn't know if it's a reflection or if it reflects the GDP. So for you to know the real value of the population regarding GDP, use GDP per capita, which is GDP divided by total population. Clear?
Yeah.
Statistical errors. These are information that are being gathered. We might make mistakes when gathering this information. So if in the course of gathering the information, there are mistakes, then the mistake will reflect on the GDP value. So there will be mistake in the value of GDP too. Clear? The value of unproduced goods. So goods and services are not traded and therefore economic activity is not recorded. So subsistence production. I could produce water that I'm drinking in my house. It means I'm not going to buy water outside. So how do you now calculate what I'm not buying outside, what I'm producing? How do you calculate it with your GDP? I'm not selling. It's my own sustenance.
Yeah.
So how can it be calculated with what is being produced in the country? So because there are some goods that are not traded, it makes the value of GDP of a country not to be accurate.
Yeah.
Clear?
Clear.
The hidden economy. When we talk about the hidden economy, we're talking about the black market. Things that we do that government is not involved in.
It's not well.
Yes. So if these things happen, government is not aware because we want to avoid tax or it is illegal to do it. But money is going through it. There's exchange of money. But government is not aware. So money is going in and out without it being recorded. That is hidden economy. That will not make our GDP to be accurate. Clear?
Yes.
GDP and living standards. GDP is used to measure living standards. However, just because GDP rises, it does not automatically mean that living standards are also rising. Other factors have to be taken into account, such as the amount of leisure time people have. I'm going to explain each one at a time.
Yeah, yes.
The GDP of the country might increase, but that does not mean that the living standard is increasing. If GDP increases, it might be because inflation rate. So because inflation rate has increased, price of goods has increased, the GDP would increase definitely. But does it mean that individuals in that economy are enjoying this rise in GDP? No. You have to understand if there's increase in the number of people that are, that are having leisure than before. You have to know that. So that means if you want to know if the living standard has improved, that means the number of people that have time for leisure would have increased. One, the way extra income is shared between the population. How do we share income? What is the gap between the rich and the poor? So is the gap between the rich and the poor reducing? If it is reducing, that means it reflects on the increase in GDP. If not, and most of the time when GDP increases like this, due to inflation, the rich becomes richer, the poor becomes poorer. So you have to check with the living standards by checking on the gap. Is it increasing or reducing? Whether growth has resulted in pollution. So when you're talking about GDP, you have to understand that if firms are increasing their output, pollution might have increased. So if pollution is increasing, that means things are not doing well, because pollution should be reduced. And how is pollution going to be reduced? By investing more in technology, sustainable development. So that has to be put into consideration. What about the quality of goods and services produced in that economy? So for the living standards to improve, all these things must improve. And then you can talk about the GDP. Is it clear? Another factor is external cost. GDP does not take into account external costs such as environmental damage. So GDP might increase, but we don't talk about, there's no item taking away environmental damage from the item we calculate in GDP. So that means GDP does not put into account sustainable development, environmental damage, which has to be put into account, because we cannot sustain our environment, we cannot sustain our economy when resources are used up. So, but GDP does not put that into account. So there's no consideration. GDP does not account for damage of the environment. Is it clear? The economic cycle. Yeah, when we talk about economic cycle, we're talking about how things changes over time within the economy. We call it the business cycle too. Over a period of time, excuse me, please. The economic cycle or the business cycle, over a period of time, GDP is expected to grow. However, the rate of growth is not likely to be smooth. There is likely to be some variation, and it is also possible for GDP to fall. This variation is often referred to as an economic trade or business cycle, which is shown here. So we have the boom, the downturn, recovery, recession, or depression. So we start with one at a time. Boom. The impact of the economic cycle on growth, employment, and inflation. Boom. The boom is when the peak of the cycle is called the boom. That means things are at the highest. Economic growth is at the highest. That is boom. So during the boom, GDP is growing, yes. Highest possible. During the boom, GDP is growing fast because the economy is performing well. Existing firms will be expanding and new firms will be entering in the market. Demand will be rising, jobs will be created, wages will be rising, and profits will be made by firms will be rising. However, prices may also be rising. So during boom, there will be employment. There will be output increasing. Income level will be increasing. Wage rate will be increasing. But all these things will increase aggregate demand within the economy. As a result of that, prices will rise, inflation. Clear? Downturn. A boom will be followed by a downturn. The economy is still growing, but at a slower rate. Demand for goods and services will stop increasing or begin to fall. Unemployment will start and wage increases will slow down. Many firms will stop expanding. Profit may fall and some firms will leave the market. Prices will rise more slowly. During downturn, at that point in time, wage rates would start reducing. firms will not be making profit as they used to make. Demand within the economy will start reducing because prices has increased. You know, at the end of boom, there's inflation.
It's like starting to fall.
Yeah, there's inflation. So because there's inflation at the end of boom, it will be the consequence of downturn. It will be the result of downturn, where inflation would mean that businesses will not be willing to, consumers will not be willing to buy more. Businesses will not be selling as they used to sell.
So if inflation happens, downturn will also happen right after.
Yes. Do you get it?
Yes.
So at that point in time, things become slower. Employment would also fall. Do you understand? That is downfall. Profit would fall. Businesses will not be able to expand further because there's no revenue that is coming in between. Clear? That is downturn. Then we go to recession or depression. At the bottom of the economic cycle, GDP may be flat. If GDP starts to fall, the bottom of the cycle may be referred to as depression or slump. Such a period is often associated with widespread poverty. Demand will start to fall for many goods and services, particularly non-essentials. Unemployment rises sharply. Business confidence is very slow. It's very low. Bankruptcies rise. Prices become flat. The price of some things may even fall. A less severe version of a depression is a recession. So, during slump, we call it slump. During slump, the first thing that will happen is that the poverty rate will increase. Why will poverty rate increase? Because with downturn, unemployment starts increasing. So during slump or depression, unemployment will be at the highest rate. Level of income would fall drastically. So people will not have a better living standard anymore. So goods and services would not be produced as they used to be producing. Businesses would not have any other choice than to reduce prices because nobody is buying, no money to buy. Demand pull inflation would fall. Do you get it?
Yes.
So when demand pull inflation falls, prices would fall. This is recession. Economic activity will be in decline. Clear? Now that prices are falling, demand pull inflation is reducing. Prices has fell. People will start thinking about buying. They will start buying. That is recovery. Clear?
So it's this economy after recovery boom happens again.
Yes.
It's
cycle.
It's
a cycle. It's cyclical.
Yeah, will not finish.
Do you get it? So during recovery, unemployment will fall because firms will start making money.
Start employing.
Businesses will start making money. They will start employing. Income will rise.
Yeah.
Is it clear? The impact of the economy. The impact of economic growth. Promoting growth is one of the government key macroeconomic. Yes, economic growth is one of government macroeconomic objectives. So, the different impacts of that economic growth can have are outlined below. So, if there's economic growth, how does it reflect in employment? Economic growth is the result of business generating more output. As business produce more, they need more workers. Consequently, economic growth raises the employment level and thus reduce unemployment. Government also tend to spend more during periods of economic growth. This will also help to create more jobs in education, healthcare, and infrastructure development, for example. So as soon as there's economic growth, it means output will increase. Aggregate demand will increase. So because aggregate demand has to increase, output has to reflect on aggregate demand. Firms have to meet the increasing demand within the economy. As a result of that, they have to employ more workers. So employment would rise as a result of that. Not only that, government will also spend because taxation or revenue would have increased for government. As a result, government would be able to spend on health, education, and infrastructure. So in health, government might start building new hospitals. As a result of that, government will employ more doctors. Government will employ people to build this hospital. Employment will also increase. Clear? As soon as employment increases, income level rises. Standard of living would improve. People have more money to spend. Disposable income would rise. Is it clear? Poverty. As soon as economic growth happens, poverty level would fall. At least people will move from abject poverty to relative poverty. Clear? Productive potential. Economic growth will bring about increasing productive potential of the economy. That means the GDP, the PPC curve will shift outward from PPC1 to PPC2. Clear? Inflation. Inflation would rise because aggregate demand in the economy would increase. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Do you want me to read or you understand?
No, I understand. It's simple.
Because if employment is has an inverse relationship with inflation. So if you want to reduce inflation in the economy, you have to increase unemployment.
Yeah.
You have to increase what? Unemployment. And if employment is increasing, inflation would. If employment is decreasing, inflation would rise. Is it clear? So it becomes direct proportion there. Clear? The environment. Economic growth will bring about damage to environment. It will bring about used up resources. So it's either you try to think about sustainable development or you forget about economic growth. So here economic growth means that the future generation will have fewer resources. This is all sustainable growth. So if economy is growing, there can't be a sustainable development. So there will be unsustainable growth. You understand what unsustainable growth is here? The growth that will affect future generation. Sustainable development means the actions we take now would help the future generation. Is it clear? We'll move on. Oh, must be just question. This is a calculation. Yeah. They said the value of GDP of a country. The value of a GDP of a country is 980 million in 2016. The value was 1.1 billion and 20 million and 20 million. What is the rate of economic growth over these 2 years? Okay. 1.2 million minus 980 million. Now that 80 million gives us what?
So we have to minus it.
Yes, first. Because they want the rate of economic, right? Economic growth rate, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be 40.
40.
Yeah.
Million.
1.2 minus 980 million is 40 million.
So, and then,
so it will be 40 million minus 980 million multiplied by 100.
So now I multiply it by.
So 40 divided by 980 multiplied by 100. 980, just use 980. Forget about the millions now. 40 divided by 980 multiplied by 100. Because it has to be in percent.
Multiply
by 100.
4.08%.
The D, yes. Is it clear now?
Yeah.
Good. Question 2. Which of the following is a benefit of economic growth? Of economic growth.
B.
What?
B.
Great. Higher levels of employment. So that ends our lesson for today. The topic economic growth, right? Thank you.